Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video where once again we are prepping towards a double game week 25. Liverpool and Aston Villa both doubling. Let's get into our teams and see how we're looking to be set up, ready to go ahead of this double.
Okay, then. So yeah, our teams are probably looking a little bit different to what they were in the team review or reveals last week because we had that huge announcement. Sort of what is it? The day before the deadline that we had the double game weeks being moved forward. So yeah, we have a double now for Liverpool. I personally activated my assistant manager chip on Arnie Slot. At the time of recording, we've only had the one game so far, so pretty happy with the returns against Bournemouth. Considering it was the harder game of the double to come away with a 2-0 win, I was actually pretty happy with that. I know obviously Moyes outscored him, but for me, yeah, I weren't really expecting anything like the 10 points I think it was that he scored. So happy to have him at the moment. Obviously, we'll see how he does against Everton, and then we'll carry him through to that double with Wolves at home and then Aston Villa away. Hopefully, they can get 3 out of 4 wins. I feel like I'd be pretty happy with that, and then I'd look to probably move him onto someone else for that third game week. So yeah, that covers off my assistant manager chip at the moment. I haven't used my triple captain, which at the time of recording is actually outscoring the assistant manager chips over the one game week. So should be an interesting one in terms of when to use that later down the line, which I'll cover off probably in a future video. Going into defence, then I made quite a few transfers last week. David Raya was one of them, coming out for Jordan Pickford, who got an assist, which was absolutely remarkable in the opening minute. So he's currently on 9 points. He's got Crystal Palace away this week. Obviously, I picked him in terms of the idea of he plays in game week 29, so I was happy to go ahead with that. Obviously, not as much of an importance on that with how the sort of the FA Cup draws going, and obviously Liverpool being knocked out. So there's more teams that are going to be available, and our assets are going to be playing for in game week 34, which is going to be the second blank of the season. So yeah, overall pretty happy to have an Everton defender in there. They're pretty solid defensively in terms of the season, top 10 defence there, so happy to have him. Trent's in defence at the time recording. We're recording this on the Sunday, so we haven't seen the Merseyside derby yet. He could become a problem if that injury is anything more longer term. I wouldn't have expected him in that Plymouth squad yesterday anyway, considering there was a lot of sort of missing players being rested anyway. So yeah, hopefully he is back for that Everton game, and he can continue and play these games against Wolves and Aston Villa. I think it's crucial that the first team will be played in pretty much all those Premier League games now. Obviously they've wrapped up the Champions League, the Carabao Cup finals, a few weeks away yet, so I'd expect them to go pretty full strength in the Premier League to secure the title as early as they can. Anthony Robinson is next. He's got Forest at home this week. It's an interesting one because Forest obviously went from getting absolutely battered to battering Brighton. So yeah, it will be an interesting one. Obviously Robinson does carry the real good attacking threat. I think that's 11 assists on the season now. It's getting quite ridiculous. Some of them are lucky, don't get me wrong, but to post those sort of numbers as a wing back, it's pretty crazy. And then we've got Gabriel as well, who was another transfer in last week. He's got Leicester away this week, which I like. Obviously got the most attacking threat out of all those Arsenal defenders, so it feels quite nice to hop off of Raya, hop on Gabriel. In terms of if I'm only having one Arsenal defender, I'd want it to be the guy who's got the highest ceiling, and I feel like I've achieved that. In terms of the bench, Mikalenko and Cole will sort of take those places. I will be looking to move on both of those guys in the upcoming weeks, but not this week. The plan is to roll the transfer. What's the thoughts on the defence, Ben?
Yeah, so I think the defence is fairly solid for this week. Of course, I don't think there's too much appeal in terms of going for an Aston Villa defender this week. So I agree with the sentiment that's sort of keeping you two on the bench for now, and then potentially transferring a little bit further on down the line. Yeah, Pickford in terms of high scoring keepers, he's up there this season, and Robinson maybe a couple of lucky assists here and there. But yeah, I do think the attacking returns won't come as consistently from now to the end of the season at least. I expect to see him finishing on about 15 assists maybe for the season, which still not going to be that bad at all. Like I think he's still got a couple of holes in him between now and the end of the season. Yeah, we'll just have to see on the fitness and availability. Trent, of course, wasn't in the squad against Plymouth. Neither was Connor Bradley, so we've got to make that what we do. And does that potentially mean he's not ready for the Merseyside derby and could be not ready for sort of further games down the line? We'll just have to wait and see. We just don't have enough information on that yet. And then, yeah, I don't mind the pick in terms of removing Raya, keeping Gabriel in. Like Arsenal do have good fixtures coming up, but you can't be so reliant on them to keep clean sheets going forward. They've had good data, but again, like Aston Villa, haven't backed that up to the maximum potential that we thought they would. So yeah, I don't mind a defensive pick at all.
Nice. So yeah, we're going to move on to the midfield now. Then it's a five-man midfield. We start on left to right. Morgan Rogers is up first. Obviously, I've held him for the longest time now. Quite a bit of value built up in him, and he is on the vice captaincy for the double game week with Ipswich at home and Liverpool at home. If you wanted to be really rogue, you could probably go and captain him. I just think Mo Salah will be 200%, if not more. EO this week. A lot of people will look to triple captain him, I think, this week as well. Morgan Rogers, though, yeah, we're just waiting for one of those hauls, as we discussed in transfer targets in the Premier League. He's done it in the FA Cup and the Champions League. Please do it against Ipswich. That would be absolutely lovely. Cole Palmer's up next. In general, I've been not disappointed with Cole Palmer. I just don't think this Enzo Maresca system, when Lavia is out, really suits him. I think it's really sort of detrimental to how he plays and how he can get involved in terms of attack and returns. So yeah, it'll be one to watch at the moment. I won't be selling anytime soon, but it's definitely on my radar. If I need funds, I probably wouldn't be reluctant to sell him if it sort of continues how it's going. Brighton away, though, is a decent fixture, despite obviously Chelsea losing there in the FA Cup this weekend. Obviously Palmer got an attack and return in that game due to Verbruggen just burying it in his own goal. But yeah, I think the fixture's still there for Chelsea, and the fact that obviously they're playing poorly up front, I don't think it's necessarily down to Cole Palmer. I think it's down to the sort of the assets around him. Brian and Bumo, West Ham away this week, is a decent fixture. Not the best though, not as sort of easily targetable as it was at the start of the season. I think Graham Potter's really improved that side from a structural point of view, and defensively they have improved since he's come in, which is massive because they were just there to be had really. So yeah, not expecting too much this week really from those Brentford players. I think it's in the upcoming two after it with Leicester and I think Wolves after that. I think they're the sort of the prime fixtures for those Brentford attackers. We've got Dango in there, who was another player that I brought in last week ahead of this fixture this week with Southampton away. Southampton just lost to Championship side Burnley, playing a full strength 11, which is kind of funny when you're looking at this Bournemouth side who are in unbelievable form. Just beat Everton 2-0 away from home as well, which is a tough feat considering how well David Moyes has been doing. So yeah, I think Atara is an interesting one for me going into that game. Could be a huge differential as well. Only 1.6% owned as well at the time of recording, which is massive. So yeah, if we're getting any hauls out of him, I'd be absolutely delighted. And then obviously Mo Salah's got the armband. Wolves at home, Aston Villa away. If I weren't on the assistant manager, I'd 100% be playing my triple captaincy chip for him this week. I think that Wolves at home game's just it screams of goals for him. Even Villa away, I could see him doing well there. Let's be real, like Liverpool need to win every single game if they wanted to be Premier League champions, and I think that's what they will do from now until the end of the season. So what's the thoughts on the midfield, Ben?
Yeah, like a decent midfield. Of course, like got the coverage for the double game week assets as well. There could be consideration, of course, with you having Schlott as the assistant manager, so maybe bringing in another one or two assets from Aston Villa. I don't think it's a necessity to bring in two, but having at least maybe one more is definitely a consideration to make. Of course, who that would be for is a really difficult decision in itself, given the structure of your team. But yeah, I think I agree with the captaincy choice in terms of Salah captain over Rodgers. If you're going differential, you go Rodgers, but I don't think it's worth the risk to go against him this week. And yeah, I think there's a huge haul potential one for Dango with that Southampton away fixture. It looked really tasty, and even outside sort of like the double game week, like a lot of managers will be looking towards those Bournemouth assets this week just because of how well they're playing, how poorly Southampton are playing as well. So yeah, I do think overall really strong midfield. Could there be another Aston Villa asset in there? Potentially, but there's a lot of question marks on a couple of those assets at the moment, which is why I'd sort of hold fire until later on before the deadline.
Okay, then to finish off the forward line, then we've got obviously Chris Wood off the back of his hat-trick, which was phenomenal. just such a reliable. We've said it for weeks now, like just the consistency that you get out of him. You don't really get the hauls like we saw last week, but you know that he will score, one goal every 3 game weeks. That's a certainty. And he's just been bagging away consistently, which is fantastic. I think Fulham away is not the worst game in the world as well. I could see Forest picking up some points there, and if they do, usually Chris Wood is a part of it. So yeah, happy to have him at the moment. And then that same with Alexander Isak. Fantastic for performance against Arsenal again in the Carabao Cup. Just looked unbelievable against Saliba and Gabriel. City away, if they just looked so poor in the FA Cup this weekend. I know it's a bit of a rotated side, but yeah, more than happy to have Alexander Isak. Again, if you've got the likes of Gordon, even Hall potentially, I'd be holding on to those guys and even playing them this week, because that fixture is really tidy for Isak. And then obviously João Pedro on the bench. I'll be holding on to him for that Southampton game. I think it might be Gameweek 26, and then looking to get rid of him in the future as well. What's the thoughts on the front line, Ben?
Yeah, front line's fairly good. Like, of course, like fairly sort of template players in there. And I do agree. Like, I think you should be definitely playing Isak this week with City away. Whether or not you do for Hull, I'm not sure, but yeah, like I do think that Newcastle can get some decent points out of that. And yeah, overall the squad looks very decent. Like I said, there is potential for bringing in maybe one more Aston Villa player, but it's a case of who for, and in terms of sort of decision making, that may be something that is decided for you if we get some early like injury news, etc. on that side of things. Okay, so moving on into my team, and again, like Josh last week, we hit the assistant manager chip due to that news that we had, and I brought in David Moyes using. You don't use the free transfer when you're bringing them in, so I didn't end up using any free transfers. I've got three free transfers now, 0.1 in the bank, so really can attack this double game week again. The plan for me with Moyes is to change that to Emery. There's table bonus up for grabs against Liverpool, so I'm just going to go against the Arnie Slot grain for this one again, and hopefully let's see what happens. I'm not sure whether I'll come out on top or not over the 2 game weeks, but with the upside, it is there. So I'm wanting to chase that and see how many points that we can get. So yeah, the double Arsenal defence to start with, Riot and Timber. The fixture away at Leicester is a really good one. Leicester, fairly toothless against most teams at the moment. So hopeful that Arsenal can keep a clean sheet for that one. Of course, got Trent Alexander-Arnold. Let's see how he is, if he's injured or if he's not, because I think he is a fantastic asset. But if he is injured, we can make a couple of provisions on transfer plans, etc., to move a couple of things around. And then Mykolenko brings up the back line. Not ideal having to play him against Palace away, but it's either him or Lewis Hall. For myself at the moment, I'm not sure I want to triple up on Newcastle away at Manchester City, which is what I would do if I had Hall playing. So I'm backing Mykolenko this time. I'm not 100% on either. It's not the most ideal situation, but I'm just going to have to accept that I'm playing one of them this week. And as it stands, it's Mykolenko. So Josh, what's the thoughts there on the defence?
Yeah, I think overall it's fairly solid. Double Arsenal is going to be nice sort of EO booster, because I don't think a lot of managers are on that at the moment, with the focus being turned towards those Liverpool assets. Trent, obviously we've got to wait and see. Similar with Mykolenko as well. He was not in the squad for the Bournemouth FA Cup game. He had a small calf problem, David Moyes has said. So yeah, no guarantee that he plays Merseyside derby. Also, we're recording this Sunday night after the FA Cup games. So yeah, one to keep an eye on there. But for me, I think I'd be tempted to go Hall. I don't think the clean sheet's in the bag for either of them, and obviously the attacking threat is going to be greater for Hall. I think in general down that right hand side for City as well, they just concede goals, especially with Mateus Nunes there. So yeah, I'd personally play the attacking fullback if the clean sheet's sort of up for grabs, I guess you could say. But yeah, overall, really solid defence.
Okay, so moving on into midfield, and of course we've got Salah captained as well. Vice captain will probably move on to Morgan Rogers as we get closer to the deadline. Of course, Cole Palmer, like Josh said, he's not been doing too well recently in terms of the system that Maresca's playing. So we'll have to just keep an eye on that. Ismail Assar, I'm more and more tempted each week or each minute that goes by, to be honest, to keep him for this week for this Everton at home fixture, because it is quite a nice one. Of course, that means I'll be going directly against the Mykolenko pick. But I do think he has got sort of high potential this week in terms of scoring, etc. So yeah, we'll have to just wait and see on that one. But it is fairly interesting with three free transfers. I've got two free transfers essentially to play around in with my team. Of course, I'm going to have to free up some budget as well to get Unai Emery in. So I'm going to have to make one free transfer somewhere down the line. One of those players to make way could be Anthony Gordon for potentially a Bournemouth midfielder, or if I'm feeling sort of adventurous, maybe someone like Marcus Rashford as well. And then, of course, Morgan Rogers to round up the midfield. Josh, there's a potential transfer plan forming here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's obviously logical to probably move on Gordon. Newcastle's fixtures up until blank 29 are not the best. So it'll be interesting to see how they do as well. They've played a lot of tough games in recent weeks. It'll be interesting to see if they can sort of keep up the momentum. I know obviously Isak didn't feature at all against Birmingham, same as Gordon, weren't in the squad. I think he had a knock or something, so again something to monitor if you are an owner. But yeah, he's the most probably logical player to move on. I don't think it's a bad fixture this week against City, but you could definitely attack the upside, whether that be going with Rashford, even going with a Bournemouth attacker, because that fixture in itself is so good. So yeah, it makes sense going for either of those guys.
Okay, and to round off the team, we've got Alexander Isak up top. Of course, like I said, I didn't ideally want to start three Newcastle assets away at Manchester City. Traditionally, it's not been, the most ideal fixture, but it is there up for grabs this year around. And then Cody Gakpo up top as well, battling against Arne Slot in that third Liverpool asset battle. So yeah, fairly happy with that side of things. There's a couple of potential transfer plans, as I mentioned. I'm going to be bringing in Unai Emery for Moyes, which means freeing up a little bit of funds. I can do that a couple of different ways. Anthony Gordon is probably going to be the make weight here for Rashford. If I wanted to get Ollie Watkins, then that would be very difficult to do for me in my squad structure. It'd be a case that genuine consideration would be made if Trent Alexander-Arnold was ruled out injured. I could go from him to Canate, Gordon to Dango, and then João Pedro all the way up to Ollie Watkins. But of course, that's 4 and -4. So yeah, that is the team. There's a couple of sort of transfer plans I'm thinking of. But at the moment, I'm leaning more towards just sort of the safer pick, just one manager transfer, one transfer from Gordon to another midfielder and rolling the other transfer. But we'll just have to wait and see. A lot of news can come out between now and the deadline. So Josh, what's the overall thoughts there on the team?
Yeah, I like it. I think that Gakpo fixture with Wolves at home, he's traditionally been much better at home than he has away from home this season. So it could be a real high scorer, someone who's obviously going to affect my rank quite massively. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in those games. I expect him to play both of them. So yeah, hoping for a couple of blanks there, hopefully. And then yeah, Isak, obviously everyone owns him, and he's been such a reliable asset. I think with him, I'd be more tempted to keep. If anyone's thinking of moving him to Watkins, I should be careful of the sort of the sell value with him, because a lot of us got him quite early. And yeah, he's now at like 9.5 million or something crazy like that. So yeah, just be careful if you're thinking of making that sort of sideways transfer. Okay then, so that wraps up our Game Week 25 team reveals. Heading into the doubles, nice back-to-back doubles. This is when FPL gets really fun. So yeah, if you did enjoy it, make sure you do drop the like button as well. Obviously, if our team reveals these are on Sunday at the moment, the deadline's not until Friday night, so a lot could change in between then, especially with the Everton and Liverpool game. So if you are wanting the most up-to-date info and stuff like that, do head over to our Instagram, because we are posting our team reveals over on there.
Yeah, like Josh said, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
We'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
Oh, you may rise, but you'll never make me want